the next case I want to speak to you about. And that's that New York City Police Department nightclub extortion case from the 3-4 precinct involving the commanding officer there and certain individuals, James Caban and Eddie Caban. And I guess there was a Lieutenant Rodriguez that was in that command and was actually transferred because of all of this. Maybe you could get into that a little bit, explain the whole scope of the lawsuit.
Yeah, and so I recently filed a charge of discrimination in the case involving Emilio Rodriguez. He was the integrity control officer at the 34th precinct, and the allegations he was making besides discrimination is that there was a certain racket going on, a protection racket. There were certain locations, although I did not name the locations in the actual EEOC charge, which is on my website. I do know the location. And those particular locations, the allegation was that the commanding officer and other parties in the precinct were taking a no enforcement activity. In other words, protection. They were protecting a particular location because those were, quote, Cabans places, all right? Meaning James Caban. Well, there's been allegations, of course, it's been floating out in the public that there's some protection racket, including one gentleman, a club owner in Brooklyn, that talked about this and said, that basically the police put him out of business. But this is not a shock to anyone because if you remember, or if you don't know, remember I had the Club Love and Lust case in Brooklyn about 2017, 2018 that was involving the same kind of allegations in the 7-2. And I talk about the same thing. That's a club that 50 Cent was loosely affiliated with. Well, they try to say he was the owner, but the point is the same issue is done there. Certain enforcement was taken against other places, and then the preferred places, no enforcement activity is being taken. And in the 34th precinct, and we know we can make this case because after it hit the paper, a number of citizens called me and emailed me in support of Rodriguez, talked about how the police weren't enforcing things, they weren't enforcing the noise codes, they weren't going and inspecting the clubs. People are double, triple parking, so you can't even drive around. God forbid if there's an emergency, you can't get around. They were throwing parties in the park. I mean, I never heard this before. Bringing generators in the park, throwing parties. There was all kind of activities going on, and the police did nothing about it. The 311 calls, they were opening them and closing them right away. But we've seen this before because it's happened in Brooklyn South. I believe it's a 6-0 under St. Fort. So this has happened before. And I don't know if you saw in the paper, Sal, but the other day the police commissioner says, hey, we have a new system. I forgot the name of it, but it's a software that's going to allow us to evaluate and make assessments of the 311 calls. Yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah, but that's how you cover it up. So now when Tina Moore, who wrote the story originally, then did a follow-up story, she found out during the course of her investigation, writing an article, that there was 5,000-6,000 or maybe more than that. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but literally thousands of 311 calls and communications, text messages, etc., that went to the 34th precinct, and only a small segment, maybe 300 cases, action was taken on. So what happened to the other ones? So yeah, so that case in particular, and if you look at the claim, he specifically talks about James Caban came into the precinct, and he thought he was the police commissioner, James Edward Caban. They would salute him. Other people thought he was the person, and other people also recognized that he was there, and they thought it was Caban as well, including with his own security detail, etc. And then the other part of the allegations that they were motivated to do this, according to the allegation, because they thought they would get promotion as a benefit. So I'm assuming that case is going to be investigated as well, because if that's true, that's the type of corruption that the police department should be trying to ferret out.
Yeah, but we've said this forever, because the other brother, Richard Caban, as you know, all the Cabans are hanging out up there, Con Sofrito in the Bronx, and that place is kind of like the ring. It's the ringleader of all this nightclubs, and like all the nightclubs all answer to that place, because that's where they were gathering up and coming up with their schemes or whatever. And there's a gentleman pictured here in the middle also. That's Dennis Rodriguez. He was a sergeant. He was in the one of the fraternal organizations, but he's another guy pictured up there, Con Sofrito, with these guys. So again, and you're criminally associating with not only the manager of that place, but also all the other cast of characters that are there. And I also understand there were other allegations of, I guess, people that were paying, whoever it was, fraternal organizations, but they were paying to get promoted. I don't know if you know anything about that.
Well, like I said, I know a lot of things about a lot of things. So I will say I know a lot of things. But I can say, since you're talking about Concertitos, and this kind of gets back to your case now, I started subpoenaing information that I couldn't get from the city. Anyway, I got a bunch of information from the state liquor authority. And then, of course, we were able to find out that through emails that some person, some police officer in the 45th precinct wrote a violation. That violation was never fully investigated because at some point it went from the 4-5 to then the human trafficking part of what would have been OCCB in the old days, which is the Organized Crime Control Bureau, but now the Detective Bureau. And we can see that the case was referred for human trafficking, a sergeant responds for human trafficking, and then that's it. Nothing more. It's because some of the allegation was that there was drug dealing and the sale and the movement of sexual favors for money at Concertitos. But it seems like it was never fully investigated. At this point, we still think it wasn't fully investigated. And that is why Richard Caban owned the place, at least on paper, and then Jimmy Rodriguez was associated with it. So, yeah, there's some interesting stuff that's going on there. And people may have heard references to the Puerto Rican Mafia, and then you figure out who the Puerto Rican Mafia is.
Yeah, that's
like
that.
We know a lot of things about a lot of things. They're not always public, but they're going to be used in litigation.
Yeah, because then I saw in this case in particular, in the extortion case, that one of the people referenced in the case hired their own attorney and is trying to do what essentially sounds like a slap suit against you and your clients. I don't know about you want to address that.
We're afraid. I wish, let me tell you something. Attorneys try to pull that garbage on me all the time. Not me personally, my clients, but they try to get me sanctioned, all this other kind of nonsense. Because I have the audacity to bring a case in good faith, by the way. So they can do it. It's just a waste of time and money. But this time I'm going to be more aggressive. And next time somebody pull that on me, they're going to get to see the Eric Sands you normally don't get to come out. I'm going to be super aggressive against them, to go against them, and then go to the Bar Association and try to have them disbarred.
You just watched the clip from the Sal Greco show. If you want to watch the full episode, click the link below. And while you're at it, please hit the like, share, subscribe button. And don't forget to click the notification button also.